The conference hall of the Galactic Diplomatic Center was a marvel of architectural design, a massive spherical chamber that defied traditional spatial constraints. Gravitational modulators allowed delegates from 100 different worlds to occupy the same space, each in their native environmental conditions. Crystalline beings floated next to methane-breathing entities, silicon-based life forms mingled with energy constructs, and amid this kaleidoscope of alien diversity, Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat almost completely unnoticed. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency across an antiquated tablet, its surface scratched and worn, a relic that seemed laughably primitive compared to the holographic interfaces surrounding her. Most observers would have dismissed her as another low-level bureaucratic assistant, another human drone in the vast machinery of interstellar diplomacy. Her unremarkable appearance was intentional. Mousy brown hair pulled back in a loose bun, wire-rimmed glasses perched on a slightly crooked nose, a generic gray blazer that seemed designed to blend into the background. But beneath that carefully cultivated veneer of mediocrity burned a mind unlike any other. Elena Rodriguez was the product of humanity's most classified research program, a project so deeply hidden that even most government officials believed it was nothing more than an urban legend. She was a specialist in synapsecological warfare, a field that existed in the razor-thin space between academic research and strategic intelligence. Her doctoral thesis, rejected by 17 different academic journals and classified top secret within hours of its submission, had been a comprehensive breakdown of interspecies communication vulnerabilities. The tablet before her was anything but a simple device. Disguised as an outdated piece of technology, it was actually a quantum-encrypted supercomputer capable of processing more information in a microsecond than most alien civilizations could manage in a standard orbital cycle. Each tap of her fingers was a complex series of commands, each seemingly random scroll a deep-level scan of the diplomatic proceedings. Around her, the alien delegates postured and preened. The Krell-Theri delegation dominated the central platform, their crystalline bodies refracting light in intricate patterns that served as both communication and display of social status. To their left, the methane-breathing Voxthar representatives gurgled and clicked, their environmental suits creating a constant background hum. Holographic translators converted their communications, but Elena's tablet was doing far more than simply translating words. She was mapping relationships. Every interaction, every subtle shift in body language, every microsecond of communication delay was being processed, analyzed, and stored. Where others saw a diplomatic conference, Elena saw a complex ecosystem of power, vulnerability, and potential conflict. Her current assignment was deceptively simple: observe and assess the potential threat levels of the upcoming resource allocation negotiations. But Elena knew that simple was never truly simple in interstellar diplomacy. Humanity had learned that lesson through centuries of hard-won experience, often at the cost of entire colonies and millions of lives. A junior Krell-Theri diplomat moved slightly, his crystalline form shifting in a way that would have seemed imperceptible to most observers. But Elena's eyes, enhanced through a combination of genetic modification and cybernetic implants, caught the movement. A micro-expression, a tells that suggested underlying tension. Most would have missed it. She didn't. Her fingers continued their dance across the tablet, recording, analyzing, preparing. The most dangerous predator, after all, is the one you never see coming. Ambassador Dzexal of the Krell-Theri delegation moved with a fluidity that defied his crystalline nature. His body was a complex lattice of quantum-aligned molecular structures, each facet capable of processing information at speeds that would reduce human supercomputers to primitive counting machines. He knew this, and he made sure everyone in the diplomatic chamber understood it. Humans, he broadcast on a frequency that deliberately bypassed the standard translation protocols, are barely more than children playing with technological toys. The translation systems caught only a fraction of his contempt, smoothing out the razor's edge of his disdain. But Elena Rodriguez heard everything. Her modified auditory implants, nestled deep within her inner ear, captured the full spectrum of communication: linguistic, electromagnetic, and quantum-level resonance. The Krell theory had achieved faster-than-light communication centuries before humanity had managed to launch its first interstellar probe. Their technological superiority was not just a point of pride. It was a fundamental truth of galactic civilization, or so they believed. Zixel's diplomatic team represented the pinnacle of Krell theory achievement. Each member was a living quantum computer, their crystalline bodies capable of processing complex diplomatic scenarios in milliseconds. They could simultaneously track 1,000 different communication threads, predict potential conversation outcomes with 99.7% accuracy, and maintain perfect emotional regulation. Besides Zixel, his chief strategist, Vix Reen, projected a holographic representation of humanity's technological achievements. It was a damning display, a timeline that showed humanity's slow, painful progress. Primitive rocket technologies, rudimentary computer systems, centuries of internal conflict. The unspoken message was clear: humans were children playing at being a spacefaring civilization. What they didn't know was that every single piece of data they were displaying had been carefully curated, manipulated, and planted by human intelligence agencies. Alina watched, her tablet seemingly idle, but in reality processing more information in a single second than the entire Krell theory delegation could manage in an hour. She understood something fundamental that the aliens missed. Technology was never just about processing power. It was about adaptation, creativity, and the ability to transform limitations into strengths. The resource allocation negotiations were about to begin. At stake were critical mineral rights in the Orion Arm, a region rich with rare elements crucial for advanced technological development. The Krell theory believed their victory was already assured. Their quantum predictive models showed a 99.2% probability of complete diplomatic victory. Those models were about to be spectacularly wrong. Vix Reen began the formal presentation, his crystalline body projecting intricate holographic data streams. Each projection was a masterpiece of information manipulation, designed to overwhelm and intimidate. Layers of complex mathematical proofs, quantum entanglement diagrams, and economic projections cascaded through the chamber. Most human representatives looked overwhelmed. Their eyes glazed over, unable to process the rapid-fire information. Alina didn't even blink. Her modified neural implants were parsing every single data stream, identifying patterns, extracting hidden meanings. Where others saw a complex holographic presentation, she saw a map of vulnerabilities, of potential exploitation, of systematic weaknesses. The Krell theory believed they were conducting a diplomatic negotiation. In reality, they were walking into a trap they had been constructing for years, piece by carefully placed piece, and they didn't have the slightest idea. 15 years of obsessive research had led Alina Rodriguez to this moment. Her journey began in the aftermath of humanity's most devastating first contact, the Proxima incident, where an alien reconnaissance mission had nearly wiped out Earth's first extrasolar colony. Most researchers would have been broken by the trauma. Alina had been forged by it. Her office at the Xenobiological Research Institute was a study in controlled chaos. Walls covered in holographic displays mapped intricate networks of alien communication patterns. Quantum encrypted hard drives lined shelves made of a carbon-titanium alloy of her own design. Each drive contained petabytes of carefully collected intelligence, not just data, but the very DNA of interspecies conflict. The research had cost her everything. A marriage dissolved under the weight of her obsession. Family relationships strained to breaking point. Colleagues who called her paranoid, then gradually fell silent as her predictions began to manifest with terrifying accuracy. Her methodology was unlike anything in traditional xenobiological research. Where others collected data, Alina hunted information like a predator. She had developed a network of informants that spanned multiple star systems, some human, many not. Retired diplomats, disgraced intelligence officers, broken AI systems, abandoned communication relays. Each was a potential source of intelligence. The Proxima incident had taught humanity a brutal lesson. First contact was never about technology. It was about understanding. Elena's seemingly mundane academic papers were elaborate traps. Each footnote was a potential weapon. Every citation a carefully placed piece of misinformation designed to mislead alien intelligence agencies. Her doctoral thesis, rejected by 17 academic journals and classified top secret within hours of its submission, was a comprehensive breakdown of interspecies communication vulnerabilities that made military strategists weep. She had discovered something fundamental about intelligent alien civilizations. They all shared a common weakness: predictability. Advanced technological societies developed complex communication and decision-making systems that became their greatest vulnerability. The more advanced the civilization, the more rigid its thought patterns. The Krell were a perfect example. Their quantum-based neural networks were incredibly powerful, but fundamentally limited by their own computational logic. Her current project was her masterpiece: a comprehensive analysis of alien psychological and technological vulnerabilities that went far beyond traditional intelligence gathering. She wasn't just collecting information. She was building a weapon of unprecedented sophistication. The tablet before her was more than a device. It was a quantum-encrypted supercomputer disguised as an outdated piece of technology. Each seemingly random tap was a complex series of commands, each scroll a deep-level scan of diplomatic proceedings. Most of her colleagues believed she was chasing ghosts. The scientific community had marginalized her research, calling it speculative at best, paranoid at worst. But Elena knew the truth. Every civilization had a breaking point. Every technological system had a fundamental weakness. Her network of informants was her true strength. A retired Voxthar diplomat who traded secrets for medication. An abandoned AI communication relay floating in the Orion Arm. Broken communication systems that still whispered fragments of classified information. Each source was a puzzle piece, and Elena was building something unprecedented. A comprehensive map of galactic vulnerability. The Krell thought they were studying humanity. In reality, humanity had been studying them with surgical precision, and Elena Rodriguez was about to prove just how dangerous that study could be. The diplomatic chamber hummed with 1,000 simultaneous translations, a cacophony of linguistic and technological communication that would overwhelm most human sensory systems. But Elena Rodriguez was not most humans. A junior Krell diplomat named Enxril shifted almost imperceptibly. To the untrained eye, it was nothing. A microsecond of tension in a crystalline body designed for perfect emotional regulation. But Elena's enhanced perception caught everything. The movement was a tell, a crack in the perfect facade. Enxril had been with the diplomatic mission for less than 3 orbital cycles, young by Krell standards, which meant he was approximately 127 standard Earth years old. His neural network was less rigidly structured than the senior diplomats, more prone to subtle fluctuations of uncertainty. Elena's tablet, that seemingly archaic device, was already dissecting the moment. Quantum processors hidden beneath its scratched surface began a multi-layered analysis. Electromagnetic signature, quantum entanglement resonance, micromuscular tension patterns. Each data point was a thread in a complex tapestry of information. The resource allocation negotiations had reached a critical point. The Voxthar representatives were presenting their initial claims to the mineral-rich sectors of the Orion Arm. Complex holographic projections filled the chamber, each a maze of economic and strategic calculations that would make human economists weep. Enxril's communication module flickered. A quantum-level hiccup so brief that it would have been invisible to any other observer. But it was enough. In that microsecond of vulnerability, a cascade of encrypted data leaked, not through any traditional communication channel, but through the subtle quantum resonance of his crystalline neural network. It was a mistake that would cost the Krell everything. Elena's modified implants decoded the leak before Enxril even realized it had happened. A fundamental architectural weakness in the Krell neural network. a vulnerability so profound that it could potentially collapse their entire civilization if properly exploited. Most would have missed it. She didn't. Her fingers continued their dance across the tablet, recording, analyzing, preparing. The leak revealed more than just a technical flaw. It exposed a systemic weakness in the Krell-Theory's most advanced communication systems. Their quantum-based neural networks, long considered the pinnacle of technological evolution, had a critical point of failure. The human delegation continued their seemingly ineffectual negotiations. Ambassadors shuffled papers. Translators murmured. The complex dance of interstellar diplomacy continued its elaborate performance. But Elena knew the real negotiation was happening in frequencies no one else could perceive. A barely perceptible smile danced at the corner of her mouth. The hunt was on, and the prey didn't even know it was being stalked. Ambassador Zexal continued his presentation, completely unaware that in a single moment of junior diplomatic inexperience, the foundation of Krell-Theory technological superiority had been compromised. His crystalline body refracted light, a beautiful and deadly instrument of galactic diplomacy. He had no idea that the most dangerous weapon in the room wasn't a quantum weapon or an advanced communication system. It was a human, seemingly lost in the background, who had just found the thread that would unravel everything. The first blood had been drawn, and the Krell-Theory didn't even feel the wound. The moment was deceptively calm. Elena's fingers moved with surgical precision across her tablet, each touch a carefully orchestrated command in a symphony of digital destruction. What appeared to be a simple communication glitch was actually the most sophisticated systematic infiltration in galactic history. The Krell-Theory believed their quantum encryption was unbreakable, a network so complex that it would take centuries for any civilization to even begin to comprehend its intricacies. Their communication systems were living networks, quantum-entangled crystal matrices that could process information across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. They were wrong. The vulnerability Anxrill had inadvertently exposed was more than just a technical flaw. It was a fundamental architectural weakness that ran through the entire Krell-Theory communication infrastructure. Elena had spent 15 years preparing for exactly this moment, building tools of infiltration so subtle they were practically invisible. Her tablet wasn't just a device, it was a weapon. Firewalls crumbled like wet paper. Encryption keys unraveled, their complex quantum entanglements suddenly as fragile as spun glass. Secure communication channels became open books, their most intimate secrets laid bare with clinical precision. The first wave of infiltration was psychological. Small inconsistencies began to appear in their communication networks. Barely perceptible mistranslations, subtle shifts in data routing, the kind of micro-errors that would drive a quantum-based intelligence to paranoid distraction. Ambassador Zexal was the first to notice something was wrong. A communication burst to a strategic command center returned with unexpected latency. Another transmission showed minute variations in its quantum signature. His crystalline form vibrated with the first tremors of uncertainty. Elena watched, her eyes never leaving the tablet. The infiltration spread like a virus, but not a destructive one. This was precision engineering at its most sophisticated. She wasn't destroying the Krell-Theory network. She was systematically mapping it, understanding it, turning its own complexity against itself. Years of research had prepared her for this moment. The Proxima incident had taught humanity a brutal lesson about technological superiority. Never underestimate an opponent. Never assume technological complexity equates to invulnerability. Each penetration of their network was a carefully placed sensor, a quantum-level probe that gathered more information with every microsecond of connection. The Krell-Theory's own communication system was now feeding her intelligence faster than they could comprehend. Their quantum networks began to show the first signs of systemic breakdown. Communication channels started to bleed information. Strategic databases developed unexpected inconsistencies. Secure transmission protocols became riddled with micro-vulnerabilities. To an outside observer, nothing seemed wrong. The diplomatic conference continued its elaborate dance. Holographic displays flickered. Translators murmured. Delegates moved with practiced precision. But beneath the surface, a war was being fought in frequencies no human had ever accessed before. Zexal's neural network began to register the first true signs of panic. Quantum communication pathways that had been instantaneous now showed milliseconds of delay. Information streams became fractured, unpredictable. The most advanced communication system in the known galaxy was being systematically dismantled by a human with an outdated tablet and an impossible amount of patience. They had no idea what was coming. Psychological warfare was an art form Elena Rodriguez had perfected over decades of study. The Krell theory believed their neural networks made them immune to emotional manipulation. Their crystalline minds operated on pure logic, a computational system so advanced it could predict conversational outcomes with 99.7% accuracy. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. The first psychological strike was subtle. Strategic information leaks began to appear in the most unexpected places. Diplomatic channels, secure communication networks, even private quantum-encrypted databases started showing microscopic inconsistencies. Each leak was carefully crafted, a precision-guided missile of doubt designed to penetrate the Krell theory's seemingly impenetrable mental defenses. In the Krell theory hierarchical society, doubt was more destructive than any physical weapon. Their communication networks began to show the first signs of systemic breakdown. Tiny inconsistencies appeared in mission-critical data streams. Confidential reports developed unexpected contradictions. Secure transmission protocols started bleeding information in ways that defied their own computational logic. Ambassador Zexal was the first to feel the psychological pressure. His quantum-based neural network, once a marvel of computational perfection, began to show signs of strain. Micro-hesitations appeared in his communication patterns. Decision-making algorithms that had always been instantaneous now showed fractional delays. Elena understood something fundamental about intelligent species that the Krell theory had forgotten. Consciousness was more than pure computation. It was a delicate ecosystem of information, emotion, and uncertainty. Her leaks were masterpieces of psychological engineering. Each piece of information was designed to create maximum internal doubt. She didn't just attack their communication systems. She attacked their fundamental belief in their own superiority. A classified report about a potential strategic vulnerability appeared in a secondary communication channel. Another leak suggested internal disagreements at the highest levels of Krell theory leadership. Fragments of conversations, taken out of context, began to circulate through their supposedly secure networks. The Krell theory's rigid hierarchical society began to fracture from within. Junior diplomats started questioning senior leadership. Communication protocols became bogged down in endless verification processes. What had been instantaneous decision-making now became a quagmire of second-guessing and recursive verification. Zexal watched in growing horror as his delegation began to unravel. The perfect computational machine was showing its first genuine signs of breakdown. Diplomatic discussions that should have been predictable became chaotic. Negotiation algorithms that had always produced optimal outcomes now generated increasingly erratic results. Elena's tablet continued its silent work. Each tap was a carefully placed psychological trigger, each scroll a new vector of manipulation. She wasn't just gathering intelligence, she was systematically dismantling the Krell theory's perception of reality. The resource allocation negotiations became a battlefield of psychological warfare. Where once the Krell theory had moved with computational precision, now they hesitated. Every decision became a potential trap. Every communication a potential risk. They had believed their quantum neural networks made them invulnerable. They were wrong. Humanity had discovered something far more powerful than technological superiority. The ability to understand, to adapt, to find weakness in even the most complex systems. And Elena Rodriguez was about to show them exactly how dangerous that could be. The diplomatic chamber transformed into a battlefield of information. Elena Rodriguez stood slowly, her movement deliberate and measured. The entire room seemed to pause, though most delegates didn't even realize why. Her seemingly unremarkable presence suddenly became a gravitational point of absolute attention. When she spoke, the entire room fell silent. Her presentation wasn't a threat. It was a clinical autopsy of the Kreltheri civilization. Each word was a precision-guided missile, each sentence a layer of strategic revelation that stripped away the aliens' technological mystique. She began with their most closely guarded secret, the fundamental flaw in their quantum neural network architecture. The Kreltheri had believed this vulnerability was known only to their highest-level researchers. Elena laid it bare with mathematical precision that made their most advanced computational systems seem like children's counting blocks. The data visualization materialized around her, a holographic dissection of Kreltheri technological and societal infrastructure. Every weakness, every potential point of failure, every hidden contradiction was exposed in exquisite, merciless detail. Ambassador Zegziel's crystalline form began to fracture, not physically, but psychologically. His quantum-based neural network, once a marvel of computational perfection, started to show genuine signs of breakdown. The micro-hesitations that had begun earlier now became profound moments of uncertainty. Elena's presentation revealed something far more devastating than mere technological vulnerabilities. She exposed the fundamental psychological limitations of the Kreltheri civilization. Their rigid hierarchical structure, their absolute belief in computational superiority, their inability to truly adapt, all of it was laid bare with surgical precision. The human delegation watched in stunned silence. Most had no idea of the depths of Elena's preparation, the years of research that had led to this moment. Her colleagues from various intelligence agencies recognized the magnitude of what was happening, but even they were unprepared for the full scope of her strategic demolition. Vixreen, the Kreltheri chief strategist, attempted to interrupt, but each attempt was systematically neutralized. Elena had anticipated every possible counter-argument, every potential line of defense. Her presentation was more than a report. It was a comprehensive dismantling of an entire civilization's sense of self. The diplomatic chamber became a crucible of revelation. Other alien delegations watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. Humanity, long considered a minor player in galactic politics, was showing its true nature. This wasn't conquest through force. This was something far more powerful, conquest through understanding. Elena's final revelation was her masterpiece. She demonstrated how the Kreltheri's most advanced communication systems could be completely compromised using nothing more than human ingenuity and a deep understanding of systemic vulnerabilities. Their quantum encryption, their neural networks, their entire technological infrastructure, all of it could be rendered ineffective by a sufficiently creative approach. The Kreltheri realized, with growing horror, that they had been comprehensively defeated by someone they hadn't even considered worthy of serious attention. Ambassador Zegziel's neural network began to fragment. Computational pathways that had been instantaneous now showed profound moments of uncertainty. The perfect, rigid system was breaking down, exposed by its own inflexibility. Humanity had discovered something far more powerful than technological superiority: the ability to truly understand, to adapt, to see beyond the obvious. And Elena Rodriguez was its most perfect embodiment. The aftermath was nothing short of revolutionary. In the weeks following the diplomatic conference, the galactic power structure underwent a seismic shift that would be studied for generations. The Kreltheri Collective, once considered the most technologically advanced civilization in known space, found itself reduced to a shadow of its former self. Their rigid hierarchical society began to fracture from within. Colonies that had been subjugated for centuries saw an opportunity for rebellion. Conquered species that had long been suppressed started to challenge the Kreltheri's authority. The carefully maintained illusion of technological superiority had been completely shattered. Elena Rodriguez became a legend, though most would never know her name. Intelligence agencies around the human diplomatic corps understood the true magnitude of what had occurred. This wasn't just a diplomatic victory. It was a complete reimagining of interstellar conflict. Technological superiority meant nothing if you couldn't adapt, if you couldn't understand the fundamental nature of your opponents. The resource allocation negotiations that had seemed so critical now became almost irrelevant. The Krell-Theries' claim to the mineral-rich sectors of the Orion Arm dissolved under the weight of their exposed vulnerabilities. Other galactic civilizations began to see humanity in a fundamentally different light. No longer were humans the newcomers, the barely noticed species at the edge of galactic civilization. They were something else entirely. Nance Rill, the junior diplomat whose momentary vulnerability had started the entire cascade, was brought before the highest councils of the Krell-Therii collective. His quantum neural network was systematically dismantled, his entire existence reduced to a case study of failure. In their world, such a breach was unforgivable. But Elena knew the real victory was not in destruction. It was in understanding. Her years of research had proven something fundamental about intelligent species. True power wasn't about technological complexity. It was about adaptability. The ability to see beyond established patterns. To understand that every system, no matter how advanced, had fundamental weaknesses. The human diplomatic corps received classified briefings that would never see public light. Elena's methodology became a blueprint for a new form of interstellar intelligence gathering. Not through force, not through overwhelming technology, but through deep, comprehensive understanding. Other alien civilizations began to look at humanity differently. The species that had been dismissed as primitive, as barely worthy of consideration, was now a subject of intense study. How had they done this? What fundamental characteristic allowed them to see what others could not? Kriax, the junior xenoanthropologist who had first noted humanity's unusual characteristics years ago, found herself vindicated. Her early research papers, once dismissed, now became required reading in diplomatic academies across multiple star systems. The galactic order had changed, and it had changed because of a single human, sitting in the background, who most wouldn't have even noticed. In diplomatic training centers across alien civilizations, a new protocol was implemented. Beware, the instructors would warn, the most dangerous human is always the one you overlook. Elena Rodriguez returned to her research lab, already planning her next move. To the universe, she was a ghost, invisible, deadly, and always watching. The game had changed, and humanity had just shown the galaxy exactly what they were capable of.